Hi there, Sandra here. What do you do when you've made yourself a little mouse? A little mouse that I have dressed in sunglasses, a pair of polka dot shorts and flip-flops. Well, if you're anything like me, you just have to make him a beach hut, don't you? Here is the start of my beach hut. I've made this relatively small because he's a mouse after all. Don't want him overwhelmed, do we? And I've tried to sort of keep it into something like a proportion that I think a beach hut would be, length and height wise and so on. So with this one, I started off with a piece of 8mm chipboard which I cut on my S1. I was very pleased to find out that I could cut it because I know chipboard is notoriously difficult to cut. What I did was I put it on a power of 100, a speed of 5, and then I actually refocused the laser in the XTool software. There is an option to lower the focus, and I lowered it by 5. What happens when you're trying to cut something relatively thick like this is obviously the focus, when it doesn't autofocus, it focuses on the top. And there's only a certain amount of depth that you can get by having it focused on the top. You want the focus to be lower down. So I only lowered it by 5, not by 8mm. It cut through it in 3 passes. So I've then decided on having a traditional beach hut look. So we've got planks. So I've scored the planks on both sides, inside and out of my sides. And I haven't bothered to score it on the back because this is not something anyone's really going to be looking at. I put in another piece for the floorboards, so I decided they would have straightforward floorboards. Might put a rug in it or something if I can find some fabric to use. I have put 3mm strips around the top. Now this is partly because of aesthetics, and partly because it might come in handy when I need to actually put the roof on, because this is going to have a sloped roof and not a flat ceiling on it. I've not done that for quite some time, and when I did it was for a much bigger project and I don't remember how I did it, which is fairly typical. So I've put a little window in the back of here, just a tiny little window. Additionally, if you were to have an English beach hut, there is no electricity. So in theory, you've only got daylight unless you are sat outside. But if I only have daylight, and this is in a book nook, for example, position, on a shelf, you're not going to get any natural light through it. So I may have to use some poetic license there. I have received some lights in the post yesterday that are USB fairy lights, so I might possibly use those. The other thing I've cut out at the moment is this little anchor, and I've put some twine through it just to represent the chain. No self-respecting mouse would have a beach hut without French doors. So I have cut this piece. In fact, these pieces were cut all out of the one piece at the same time. And I have coloured them with alcohol markers. Now the sticky tape, just normal clear sticky tape that I put on the back of the doors here so that I can make the windows. Because I am going to cheat with this, and I am going to use UV gel. Try not to get it on the supposed paintwork. So this is the advantage of having a nail lamp without the base on it, because I can move this to my heart content. I don't know what's going on, but it sounds like the hounds of the Baskervilles around here. Don't have any dogs at all, but neighbours do. Okay, so I've actually put some gel in the back window there as well, because I figured, well, why not? So I'm just going to take the sticky tape off from these. So I'm thinking of painting this white, which is why I didn't go over it with the pen as well. So I just thought it'd add a bit of contrast. So these doors are probably going to be fixed in the open position. I think our little mouse is going to be very happy with this beach hut. I have some 3D printed hinges that my husband printed off for me, but these are 15mm wide, and it's too wide to allow me to put them on those French doors without this piece showing through. So he's going to try and print me some 9mm ones. They'll be 1.5mm thick, and if that works, he'll print me off a batch and I can use these hinges to have opening doors. Those can be added with a touch of hot glue. It just makes hinging a lot easier than it does any other way. This looks a little untidy because this is basically the back, even though that is the front, because what I want when it's complete is for these doors to be opened up like that, and this is the correct side of the door. It looks better. That's what you're going to be seeing, and you won't really see the hinges. I just wanted to make sure that they did open and close, and they do. Right, so the next thing is the colour. I originally used an Arteza, I think it is peppermint green, but it's a bit too strong a colour. So what I've done is I have got some chalk paint and diluted it a little bit. I had some water in here and I've gone over it. Now I've gone over it once and I need to go over it again because I still think it needs to be a little more whitewashed. There we are, a little bit more whitewashed. That won't take very long to dry. And then I want to tint this a blue. Now this is the same blue that I used on the inside of the house, or the hut I should say, and need very little of it. This is just a gouache paint. That will do nicely. Now this is for the rafters because I've cut these out and I've not yet painted them, but that's not going to take very long, as you can see. So this is my beach hut base, and I hope you like the little wheel there. I think the detail on that has come out really well. So to make my roof supports, I needed to take some measurements. I needed to measure from the outside to the outside, just to make sure that it was what it was supposed to be, and it was. But then I had to measure the width here, because when I was putting the extra pieces on that literally just hold on to this, you need to know how much to cut in, where to add the extra bit. I managed to get it right first time, which was quite amazing, but if you're using this base file, then you'll have it in a file anyway. It's included and you won't have any problem because it's already done for you. But that's how I basically designed it. I took two of these triangles, moved one down a few millimeters and then subtracted one from the other to get the empty triangle, if you like, and then added the side supports on so many millimeters in from the outside edge. I also just took the eraser with the closed path function and took off the very, very outside pointed bit of the triangle because I thought it might be too sharp a point and break off anyway. So I did that, but it was only like a millimeter or so on that outside edge. So now I've got to wait for that to dry, but while that's doing, I'm going to be designing other bits and pieces to go in here. It's going to have a kitchen and some seating and a table and some more artwork, etc., etc. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all the little bits of wood that I've got in my leftover jar and see what I can use out of that before I cut anything new. So I've put my roof supports on. Those went on really easily. I added a touch more paint where it looked like it needed it, and in fact I added some more paint here. I've also painted the actual roof pieces, but I'm not using those just yet. So the other thing you might notice is that it has like a kitchen segment at the back, which is not finished yet. And if you look from above, you might just about be able to see. I put that in there with a little support behind it because I wanted to make sure it was upright. So I've got this piece for a worktop and I have cut out a hole from it, as you can see, because it needs a sink. I know these beach huts wouldn't have very much, but they might just have a sink where you've got access to drain some water away, for example. So for my sink, I didn't have anything really that I could use, so I made up this little half box, if you like. So I made the base the same size as that, and then I just made it up, and it's got these extra flaps on it, and that's because that's going to be glued on the underside of my worktop to provide my sink. I have some Versamark here, and I have some embossing powder. I can't even remember what the embossing powder looks like when it's melted. I haven't used embossing powder for a very, very long time. So I need to get this sticky. So I'm going to cover this. It's going to be a bit sparkly, which is fine. Actually, I'm pretty happy with that. It's giving it a bit of like a stone look almost, a sort of quartzy stone look. So I'm going to give that another coat. So I've put my sink on, and then when we turn it over, we have that. And this surface has come out really well. I'm so pleased with that. Really am pleased. Things are progressing. So an update on my little mouse beach hut. As you can see, I now have the front panel put on and I have the doors in place. Now they look a bit scruffy on this side, but the idea is that they are kept open like this, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see inside anyway, and this is the nicer side of the door. I've used a couple of these tiny little angular beads to put little doorknobs on both sides of the door so he could get in and out, which would be handy. But I also use them, and I'm trying to find an angle where you can actually see this. Okay. At the back we have a sink, and I might have to use the zoom in the editing to get closer in for this. There is a tap there, and for the tap I use two of the same beads and a small piece of bracelet wire. It's a very soft but very thick wire, and it's normally twisted, so I straightened it out a little bit, chopped a tiny piece off and bent it with some needle nose pliers. So what I then did was I put down a very small amount, and it was probably less than a centimetre of UV gel. I popped one bead on one side, one bead on the other, and held this piece of wire in the centre of it, put the lamp on it and got it to set. I picked it up, put some more UV gel underneath, and then positioned it on the worktop. Now the worktop itself will look very nice during nighttime when it's lit up, because it has a sparkle to it. It wasn't quite as evident during the daytime, but now I'm under artificial light, that is really, really sparkly. So it looks like one of these really expensive granite worktops. The little jars that I have on the shelf here are coffee, tea and sugar, and they're made with the foam clay again, and just topped off with a bead, and I wrote the tea, coffee and sugar on there with a very fine tip pen. The teapot again is made from foam clay. There we go, try and get a closer look. And the fruit bowl on the right hand side was made from UV gel in part of a like necklace mould. It's just a semicircular mould, and I just brushed some of the UV gel over it, set it, put another layer on it and set it again, and then I coloured some more of the foam clay to do some fruit to go inside it. No idea what the fruit's supposed to be, it just ended up being red. More foam clay to make the dishes that went into the sink, and there's another little UV gel piece here, like a transparent glass dish in the sink as well. I've added a little table, bench table, and a seating bench, and I put some foam on the top of the seating bench. I have added a couple of pictures. The round one that you can see there, it's just origami paper put behind UV gel, and I was using a leftover circle that had been cut previously. I just raided my little leftover jar for that, as indeed I did for the other picture. Again, origami paper behind UV gel within a frame. So that's it. I haven't yet put the roof on, but I have pretty much made it. This is going to be the roof. The reason I haven't put this on yet is because I think I'm going to have to put lighting in here. And what I've got this time round is a USB string of lights. It's not that long a string, and it's multicolour. I wasn't originally thinking that I was going to put lights in here, but the trouble is, by the time you've got the roof on, unless it's broad daylight, you won't be able to see inside. So, although normally a beach hut wouldn't have electricity, I'm going to be putting lights in. Mind you, you could argue that a beach hut normally wouldn't be made like this for a mouse either. So, yeah, we're throwing realism out of the window, we really are. I've decided to put lights in here, and I've got a USB string of lights. I don't think I want to put this part of the plastic inside. The reason for that is if for any reason the lights fail, it's not likely to be the bulbs there, it's most likely going to be a joint. So if I leave the joint outside, it means that if there's a problem at a later date, the chances are I can attach something new to this and rectify the problem. So the bulbs themselves very rarely go. And I'm just going to put a dab of glue there, just so I can hold this in place. I don't want very much glue because I've got to put the roof on after this. So I've now got a whole string that can be used in the front garden area. I've put the roof on and that went really well. There was no problem doing that. I've fed the wire from the porch light there out to the side. Now you notice it's missing a door. The hinge on this side broke, so what I'm going to do is to get some hot glue and put my door on like so in the outer position and just leave it like that. So on the back of here, I have a very slight gap where the wire comes through. The light comes through here, daylight I mean. So what I'm going to do is just seal that little crack up with some white hot glue. Now the only other gap I have is a very small gap here. I came across a little problem. I have found a solution though. Okay, so we saw that the hinge on this side had broken, so I took it off and I glued this door on, and then I looked at the other side, and when it was open it looked out of balance because of the thickness of the hinge that was still left on that side. So I removed those hinges as well. Hinges gone. So we now have both the doors stuck on to the sides, and that's not a problem except for the fact that I had made my little garden area, and I had posts as far back as the corners here, and then I realised that I couldn't put this onto my house because the doors were in the way. But this is going to go on floor level like so, and I think you would just about, if they were real, I think you'd actually just about be able to close the doors on that. One of the things I wanted inside was a vase with some flowers. Now I have this big crystal bead here, and I have a load of these little flowers which are basically sequins. Now I have stuck my tweezers in the hole which is on the bottom, which enables me to hold this a lot more easily than I could if I was using my fingers to do it. And it's just a case of putting tiny little dabs in and then grabbing a flower. My mouse beach hut is now complete. I've added a few extra details and I don't think there's anything else I can add to it. Okay, so we have the bunting up here. We have a piece of cheese on a plate, which you probably can't see too well. And underneath the table there is a little mouse, just for a bit of fun. On the wall on this side here you can just about see he's got a hat hung up. And then coming outside we have the life buoy, which is cut from wood. We have the chair, the sun chair, which has been cut from wood. Then we have a little parasol which has been cut from paper, and I've used a bead for the top, and I used cocktail sticks for the struts. I set it in a piece of foam clay to represent the base. The mouse is in the chair and he's got a glass with a drink in it. That was made by dipping a silicone tool into the UV resin, flash curing it, dipping it again, flash curing, then putting a blob of resin on my silicone mat and putting the tip into that resin and then flash curing that as well. Then I added some powdered colouring to the rest of the UV resin that I hadn't used and put it into the glass, and then the whole lot was cured. He's got a little book here called The Good Life, and that's a piece of wood wrapped up in a piece of self-adhesive foam, and I just wrote the title on it. We have a little anchor and a rope on here. I've added a bucket and a spade, which you can probably just about see. Now the bucket was cut from paper, sorry, card, not paper. And what I did then, instead of putting a base on the bucket, which is fiddly and annoying to have to do, I cheated. I put the bucket onto my silicone mat, put a little bit of UV gel in it, flash cured it so that there was a solid base, topped it up with some more UV resin, cured it just a fraction, and then I put the bucket upside down in a tub of Wow embossing powder, which is actually platinum. Now that gives it the appearance of sand. So I didn't heat set the embossing powder or anything like that, I just left it as granules. And what I did then was I turned the bucket upside down so that the light could get through all the gel and cure it completely. I then added a spade, which is made from cutting down a fake nail and part of a cocktail stick. And then when I'd cut the piece of nail down, I painted it using a paint marker, basically a metallic paint marker, so it looked like it was metal. And then I added a tiny little dab of UV resin to attach the handle, because it's easier doing that than it is using a hot glue gun in some cases. And then once I've done that, I was able to glue on the handle for the bucket. I resined the little spade in place as well, so nothing in there can move, it's all set in place, it doesn't shift around. So I think that is about it. Everything that could be cut on here at all was cut on my S1 laser, and it's done a very, very good job. So I will be linking the file for this down below if you want to make it for yourself. Don't try using it for commercial use, because that is something I won't tolerate. But for general purpose, you know, if you want to make it for yourself or a family member or whatever, then feel free. You will have to have some modelling skills in here, because obviously things like fruit bowls and teapots and things are not made from wood. Oh, the other thing I did was I took a little piece of sponge, and you can just about see what's happened here. A little bit of sponge, dabbed in some glue, and I just pressed it onto the base a couple of times, and then I put on some more of that embossing powder to make it look like someone had been leaving sand there, because after all, he's on a beach, why wouldn't they? So there we are. I think that's about as detailed as I can go. I think this one is really, really sweet. I have added lights all around the fencing from inside. All around the fencing is all lit up on a USB string. I bought short strings of USB lights, and this one is a multicoloured one, and I will put in some photographs of the lights when they're on as well. Trying to get video of this just doesn't work very easily. But I'm pleased with it, and I love it now it's finished. So yeah, great project. The only other thing that I will probably do is put some foam on the base of it just to tidy it up, because you've got two pieces here joined. But other than that, no, I'm done. I think our mouse has got a very comfortable little beach hut holiday home. Okay, if you've enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe. Leave your comments down below. I always like to read comments. And I will see you again soon. Take care now.